You're watching Bread and Roses, a weekly political social magazine that's broadcast in English and Persian via New Channel TV. Hello everyone, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fariborz Pooya. In this week's program, we'll be discussing whether God exists or not with Aron Ra, vlogger and activist.
We'll also be talking about the Bangladeshi blogger, a third blogger who's been killed in Bangladesh by Islamists. We'll also talk about the case of Farinaz Khosravani in Iran, who committed suicide to avoid rape. In the insane fatwa of the week, it's from Khamenei, and how spiked hair is banned.
Good news is from a young Afghan rapper who rapped her way out of forced marriage.
Stay with us. In the God Delusion, scientist Richard Dawkins contends that God almost certainly doesn't exist, and that belief in a personal God qualifies as a delusion, which he defines as a persistent false belief held in the face of strong contradictory evidence. According to Robert Pirsig, when one person suffers from a delusion, it's called insanity. When many people suffer from it, it's called religion. I think it does make sense to call it a delusion, really, because when you look at the various gods that have been around for many years, whether it's the Greek gods, Zeus, and whether it's the Viking gods, Thor, and on and on. There's been so many gods that eventually over time people have decided, well, no, actually they don't exist. And what Dawkins says is, well, we've just gone one step further and said, your Allah and your, the Christian God and the Jewish God doesn't exist either. So it's sort of, everyone is an atheist to some extent.
Well, the fact that to believe in one God, you reject every other God, for the same reason they reject every other God, and your God could be rejected as well. So actually it's defeating the argument. And I think part of the discussion about whether God exists or not, I think it's proven over many sort of decades now. I think we've got definite proof that God doesn't exist. But the force of the religion is not to do with the rational argument. It's not about science. It's about an industry that keeps the idea alive and reproduces it on mass scale every day.
Yeah, I think this is one thing that is often missing in a lot of the conversations on this, is the need to perpetrate religion by the gatekeepers of power as a form of control, and in that sense, no matter how much, as you say, you have a rational argument for it, it still continues, and there are real reasons for it.
We need to reproduce this rational argument all the time.
Of course. Yeah.
Because it's important, because young generation of people come in, time and time again, people see the negative aspect of religion, so we need to have that rational argument, and it's very important to have that available for people to see on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I do think that science is going to help to get rid of God in the way that it already has to a large extent.
It has already.
What's happened is throughout many centuries, you've had people, using natural phenomena, for example, earthquakes and, volcanoes erupting.
And people not having control over their lives.
That's true, but also saying that that's because of God's wrath, and then realizing there are actually scientific reasons for earthquakes and so on and so forth, and all of that has helped to dispel the myth. Yeah. Definitely.
I agree, and I think that's where we need to continue that, and we need to have that rational argument all the time and reproduce it on mass scale. And I think people like Aron Ra are credit to this movement.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go and listen to a really interesting interview we had recently with Aron Ra on this very issue. Stay with us. Aron Ra, welcome to Bread and Roses. I heard you come from a Mormon background. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I come from a Mormon background, but I never identified as Mormon. My family was Mormon, but they have this tradition where they don't indoctrinate children until they're 8 years old. That's what they call the age of reason. And by then, my second grade science teacher had given me first grade, had given me a dinosaur book, and it had a cladogram on it, a tree of life, and I was able to see where everything fit in there, and it made sense. And so I accepted evolution and understood evolution very early on, and I was the only person I knew until my teen years that even understood what evolution was, much less accepted it. I was in a completely creationist environment. But I never identified as Mormon because I didn't understand everything that the Mormons are supposed to believe. So I didn't know if I believed everything that they do. And I didn't know what all of the other religions believe, or what any of the other religions believe, so how would I know whether I might have more affinity with one of them? And I couldn't label myself as a Mormon or as anything else, and I couldn't understand why everyone else was so comfortable doing that.
It's interesting because usually most people in the world, they are born into something, and out of no choice of their own, they remain in that specific religion of their parents, depending on where they're born or not. And you had until the age of 8, obviously, even though that seems quite young still.
Yes, but there's an old Jesuit saying that you give me the child until he is 7, and I will give you the man. And that's because children are susceptible to imprinting, and you have to imprint children with religion because you can't go to a grown-up that has lived their whole life in a secular environment, secular society, some origin that didn't have gods included, and then start trying to feed gods to them. All the stories in every mythology are so absurd that no adult could ever accept them and actually believe in them unless they've had them indoctrinated or inculcated into them as children.
You talk about on your website that science doesn't know everything, but religion doesn't know anything. What do you mean by that?
Well, science has a number of facts, and the truth is what the facts are. These are things that they can show to be true. And while science may not be able to answer every question yet, and there may be some questions that science may never be able to answer, every answer that we've ever learned and actually know to be true has come from science. Religion has spouted a whole bunch of crap that we can't show that anything that they've ever claimed is true. That's from any religion. None of them can show anything that is actually true, and therefore there's nothing that any of them can say that they actually know. So I mean, they profess to know these things, but as Peter Boghossian said, faith means pretending to know what you don't know, and that's what religion is.
Some will say that there's a confluence between religion and science, and that religion and science are not necessarily so antithetical to each other as you make out.
It is dishonest to assert as fact that which is not evidently true, and that's what all religions do. Science can't make an assertion until there's evidence to support it, and it has to be evidence of overwhelming evidence, which is what the legal definition of proof would be. A scientist can't even say that something is probably true until they have the evidence indicating that probability. But faith is an assertion of unreasonable conviction that is assumed without reason and defended against all reason, and these people just assert as fact whatever they want to believe. And in any other application apart from religion, that would be considered lying. That would be considered fraud. The colloquialisms that we would use is, oh, you're just making up stories, you're telling stories, you're pulling that out of your ass. That's exactly what religion is. It makes up a bunch of stories, it can't verify anything, and expresses that all of them are true through divine revelation. Or God secretly told me, hid in the closet and whispered in my ear, because this is the way God communicates. And why is it that God only talks to crazy people?
Finally, one question. How can you know for sure that God doesn't exist? What's your arguments on that?
Do we know for sure that Darth Vader doesn't exist? I mean, do we have to go to every galaxy far, far away a long time ago to verify that Darth Vader never existed? Or do we have sufficient indication that he's a made-up character and there's no aspect of Darth Vader that we can show to be true? Now, I've had religious people tell me, even on the radio in public statements, that we can safely say that there are no such things as leprechauns because we have no evidence of leprechauns. And if that's the case, if that's true for them, then removing the double standard, then I can safely say that there's no such thing as a God because we have no evidence of it. All we have, all the claims of religion, and this is true, all the claims that religion makes are either not evidently true or they're evidently not true. There's nothing we can prove to be right and a whole ton of things that we can show to be wrong with every religion.
And I think that's pretty damning when you've got a 100% failure rate. And the thing that alarms me about so many of these people with these deep-seated religious beliefs is how can anyone be so consistently proven to be absolutely wrong about absolutely everything 100% of the time for such a long time and still think that theirs is the absolute truth?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. I mean, there's some really wonderful points that are raised in that. And one of it is, and this is something that a lot of atheists have said, people like Richard Dawkins, there's no proof, there's no evidence that God exists. And generally, people need evidence for everything else in their lives. So when it comes to religion, it's fine. You know, there's no proof whatsoever, but people still believe.
And there's proof that it doesn't exist. That's the other thing. Can I just say, I think the point that Aron made, I think is very important and pertinent, is the role of religion and children. He emphasizes the fact that if somebody who's never had a religion, suddenly you start introducing the delusional idea of God, it's very difficult to convince the person that God exists. But usually religion catch young adults or children from early age, and that's where the danger of religion starts. And that's why we need to protect children. And part of the discussion we've always had, parents have no right to impose children and in religious institutions.
But it goes back also to the educational system. I mean, the fact that the reason why religious institutions insist on religious schools and religious education is because they know this is their way in and this is the way that they can keep perpetrating it. And that's why a secular education is so key, separating religion from the educational system.
Yes, I think we need to protect children from religion and delusional ideas.
Yeah, there was a comedian once, Nick Doody, who had come to one of our events, and he was saying that religion is like one of these really scary dogs, and the owner loves the dog, but for goodness sakes, the dog scares everybody else, and whatever you do with your dog, just keep it away from children. And I think that's what we need to say about God and religion. The shocking news of the week, we're discussing two cases. One is, of course, of the 30-year-old blogger who was killed by Islamists in Bangladesh. It's the third blogger now who has been killed in this very year. And it's just, they had a list of people that the Islamists said had to die, and they are actually killing people off of that very list.
And this is really, really heart-breaking. And the part of the problem is the horrible murder of free thinkers in Bangladesh. The other thing is inaction of the Bangladeshi government. Last week there were protests in different countries in front of the Bangladeshi embassy in London as well, that many people attended. But inaction, I think, is shocking as well, because an international community as well. I think we need to, there are Islamists. We know they're going to murder, and they've declared they have a list. But at the same time, the authorities in Bangladesh are not seriously confronting this. It's not just a murder investigation. Behind this murder, it's a huge Islamist organization. They need to ban effectively, if that's what they're going on the streets and publicly saying the serial killers, you have to ban the organizations. I think that they need to take that a step. And I'm really shocked that the Bangladeshi embassy is not taking any serious action.
I really think that the Bangladeshi government and all governments need to feel our rage. The thing is that in this case, Ananta, he had actually applied for a visa to the to Sweden, and he was refused. And this shows the links again of the need to open borders for people who are facing persecution. He could have possibly lived had Sweden given him that visa
and
to leave.
was he in communication with yourself?
We've been in touch as well. He actually, one of the letters he wrote to me was when we had started a campaign for the Bangladeshi bloggers that had been arrested, and then after that he also signed on to the letter denouncing Avijit Roy's murder. And he said, he said, I've read your wonderful write-up and support for our bloggers. Many, many thanks for your kind cooperation to inform the whole world about our threatening present situation by the Islamists. We're passing a crucial time. We don't know what will happen next. We need your courageous support in the future. And of course, he is no longer with us. And when you think about that, it is heartbreaking. It does put a huge responsibility on our shoulders. The Islamists are falling over themselves to take credit for his murder. We must be falling over ourselves to defend every one of the free thinkers in Bangladesh and elsewhere. It is our responsibility. And the fact that he's no longer with us is a huge loss for all of us. And we need to think about what we're going to do so that there will not be one more case of this nature. Let's also talk about another case, which is that of Farinaz Khosravani in Iran.
Iranian Kurdistan. I think the difference is that now these are Islamists who are not in power in Bangladesh. Now we have the case of a young girl who was working in a hotel and was attacked by the government agent, intelligence service of the Islam. This is the Islam in power, and she had to escape from him. She fell down and died. And there's been protests across different cities in Iranian Kurdistan, and that's the protest, I think, is important. Has forced the government to deny any link to this guy. They said they were going to investigate, but the protests are continuing. That's the real force that is going to make changes, and that's why both internationally and locally people need to protest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to all of this is really protest. We can't remain silent. We have to speak up, and we really need to show our wrath and force, and our anger and rage, and also our support for people and their rights and lives. And I think one of our key enemies are the Islamists, whether they're in power like in Iran, or whether they are a strong opposition force like in Bangladesh. They need to be held to account, and we can only hold them to account because they're barbarians. The only way we can hold them to account is by making it showing how intolerable it is for us to lose women, free thinkers, and just people. So I think we need to move on from this by showing our protest and outrage and make sure it doesn't happen again. The insane fatwa is from Khamenei in Iran, and he has basically banned spiked hair. I was going to try and spike my hair today just to annoy him, but because he says it's hairstyles of people who are devil worshippers, and it goes against Islamic sanctities.
They've done this many times. I mean, as long as I remember, hairstyle is one of the ways that young people protest and express themselves in Iranian society. And we've had different times, different waves of this hairstyle, and the spiky is one thing. And all the time, Khamenei and the lackeys have all been defeated. They've tried to shut down the hairdressers. They tried to arrest young people on the street and shave their head in public as a form of punishment. And he can't stop. They can't stop. And the fact that he says devil worshipping and hairstyle, I think that shows the depth of retreat, and just in terms of the level that they're sunk to be able to stop any protest, any expression of individual sort of individuality of young people. They can't do it.
What's interesting is you can kill free thinkers, you can hang apostates, you can kill people for being gay, you can stone people to death. This is all perfectly legal under Khamenei's rules.
And wear funny hats.
But spiked hair is out of the question.
The funny hat.
Yeah, we got that. And also unibrows are in because they've also said that men shouldn't be plucking their eyebrows. So
I see.
there's a whole lot of rules. You know, you've got to remember if you're going to manage to listen to all these insane fatwas, and that's exactly what they are, just more insanity from the Islamists.
Now, the good news for this week is about an Afghan rapper, a young girl who was brought up in Iran. The family wanted to take her back to Afghanistan and marry her to somebody she hadn't met, but she had an interest in music. She's been rapping, so she wrote a song and sang, and family were so affected by this that they changed the decision in a way.
Yeah, her song is called Brides for Sale, yes. And she's actually a really great rapper. It seems that she, you know, in Iran, because Afghans who are undocumented, which many are, aren't even allowed to go to school. So she went to these sort of schools where they taught Afghan undocumented children, and she learned karate and rapping and everything there. And so she's actually a wonderful rapper, and her videos on YouTube, if people want to see
now
it.
She's got a scholarship in America, in Utah, and now she's gone to America to study and carry on with her music. And I think this is a great news that how music is actually saved one person's life. But that actually brings up a couple of issues. One, the issue of the undocumented Afghanis, still young people in Iran, Afghanis, and only in Afghanistan been sort of forced into marriage that they want, and the fact that resistance pays. So I think that's a credit to her and many of her generation.
Yeah, definitely. What we would like to do is to show a video of her rap, if possible. We're going to try and show it at the end of the program, and it's got English subtitles as well. So it, it would be good for English viewers as well. If we don't manage to show it, you should try to just Google her name and see the video yourself, because it's just fantastic. Anyway, we've reached the end of our program. We wanted to remind you to support our work via the website Patreon. You know, it's a wonderful site that allows people to give just $1 a week per program to support us. And so far we've got, I think, 16 patrons, and we need lots more. So if you can support us, that would be great. Tell people about us. We do really rely on your support to get our programming out.
Yes, and I think that brings us to the end of this program. From Maryam and myself, until next week, goodbye.
Have a lovely week. Bye. Hi, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fariborz Pooya.
We're hosting a program called Bread and Roses. It's a weekly program that's broadcast in Persian and English in the Middle East and North Africa, primarily Iran as well. And it's also shown on YouTube internationally.
And we've been doing this since last May. We're coming up to our year's anniversary, and we've had quite a lot of fun making these videos.
We discuss taboo-breaking, free-thinking ideas. The Islamic regime of Iran has called us immoral and corrupt.
And that's why you need to support us. We are the alternative voice in Middle East and North Africa.
Of corruption and immorality. So do support us. Here's a short video from Patreon that explains how you can help us with even just $1 a week. That's nothing. Support us.
Patreon lets fans become patrons of their favorite artists and content creators. It's different than Kickstarter because it's not about one big project that requires lots of funding. It's more for bloggers or YouTubers or webcomics, anyone who creates on a regular basis. Here's how it works. When you become a patron, you're agreeing to give an artist a tip of an amount you set every time they release a piece of content, whether it's a new song, a video, or a recipe. You can set a monthly maximum to make sure that you're always within your budget. Choose an amount, enter your payment information, and you're done. Becoming a patron allows you to view and post in the artist's stream, and in exchange for your support, artists offer additional patron packages, which might include monthly Google Hangouts, music production tutorials, pre-sale concert tickets, or anything they can offer as a way to say thanks. Patreon, empowering a new generation of content creators.